We are running. Let us get the light bulb on the road. Welcome to Evolution Hour here on the 5th of January, 2026. Another New Year's starting out with a bang, isn't it? Back in Spokane from the holidays. And isn't it an exciting start of the year? Venezuelan wars, messes and piles up all over the place, but that's not our primary bit. I'm on a little bit late here because I've been following up on all of the background notes and material that accumulated over the last couple of weeks that I've had to bump into the text, and we're kind of getting up to speed. So, this little episode, our dear pals in Titans, Sarfati and Tay, are launching into their footnote heavy chapter, which is to try to demolish the bird-dinosaur connection. And it's, I think, going to be intriguing to see what they bring up. 70 footnotes in this little mother, but also interesting to see what they don't bring up. Because they start right off the bat with a allusion to the enantiornithines, which they're aware of are major birds in the Mesozoic, or bird-like, pretty close to birds. They typically still have teeth in their beak. And oh, hello, Vesta. So they're and they also have a peculiarity, which incidentally, as far as I can see, has not been worked out paleontologically, and I'm really quite surprised that creationists don't make a bigger deal out of it, which is that the shoulder structure of the enantiornithines differs completely, which is why they're distinctive from ornithine birds. And how exactly did that develop? The complete anatomy of a lot of these birds are not known. Some of them are just from fragmentary deposits, so it's not entirely clear how many taxa there might be going on. But there's certainly the major group, of which the ornithines are a little sidebar, along with microraptors and all these other feathered dinosaurs and slightly flying feathered dinosaurs that are developing in the Jurassic and Cretaceous. The enantiornithines apparently belong entirely in the Cretaceous. Anyway, so they've got shortening tails, and they still got tooth beaks and clawed wings, which makes them perfectly reasonable as a holdover version of the earliest bits of birds that we're seeing coming off in the Archaeopteryx era. The creationist point of view, they're trying to kind of downspin all of this, and they say, quote, many of the extinct birds are classified as dinosaurs, which have, quote, a mixed characteristics, quote, probably clade of birds with features that are most likely lost among living birds today, quote. And that, to my mind, is a spectacular tap dance, because how exactly can birds and dinosaurs? In fact, the chapter goes to great pains to put in a chart, dinosaur versus bird-only traits. And they got a little Venn diagram here on one of their page there. You can see that. And it's very confident and missing completely anything, which is fun and games indeed. It has to do with dinosaur-only traits versus bird-only traits. It includes the evasive claim at the bottom that dinosaurs have digits 1, 2, 3 on their hands, while bird wings have digits 2, 3, 4, which is way behind the curve. There's been excellent evidence to indicate, including experimental, that the frame shift had occurred in the little unlagons, where the dynamics of what eventually ends up as a digit can just jump to the next group and delete elements along the way. And it's a fascinating and complex issue, of which Sarfati and Tay cite no papers whatsoever on that or on the enantiornithines. So I'll be putting up some links to several papers that will give you kind of a bit on where the lay of the land is on here. One from 2011, one by Zhu 2018, and then Thomas Stewart et al. 2019, all of which are working on how exactly it develops, how broadleaf tetrapods develop, and what's going on in here. All of these, by the way, since they predate Sarfatiante's book, but anyway, back to our enantiornithines. Even in my own reference bibliography, I had a whole slew of papers on that topic, of which them are showing up in Sarfatiante's analysis. There's things by Dong and Yu, Matthew Lamana, Di Liu, Jingmai O'Connor, ton of ones from her. Min Wang, Li Dejing, Zhongjie Zhao, an awful lot of Chinese paleontologists are involved in this. O'Connor will be popping up with a single paper on Microraptor that we'll be alluding to as we plow through the chapter. I noticed that little part there. So we'll see what they deal with on Microraptor. And then I've got a brand new, or fairly brand new paper from Alexander Clark et al. 2024, which would reflect kind of state of the paleontology on the enantiornithines currently. And that one's in open access as well, a couple of years after Sarfatiante, so I'm not accusing them of sloppiness in referencing it. But boy, they are launching off with a bang. So, as I said, the enantiornithines are arriving in the early Cretaceous. They're thus after forms like Archaeopteryx, and they last all the way down to the late Cretaceous. Paper probably putting a full review, and Yu et al. 2017 are from PLOS One. All are indicating that they were pretty good flyers. Even earlier analyses have been uncertain about how good of a flyer they were because their anatomy is somewhat different from birds, sternum and that. Yeah, but it turns out more than one way to take off. And indeed, this would help a long way to explain why this bird group is in fact known from all over the world. Cretaceous world, but still the world. They were the first big group to really get widespread distribution, no doubt, because they could fly, often over long distances, island hopping from archipelagos in various spots. Remember, the Tethys Sea was what is eventually was an awful lot of islands. Remember, that's where Archaea comes from, and the Solnhofen back in the Jurassic. Not all of these are coming from Lagerstätten deposits, by the way, so that puts limitations on a lot of stuff. Anyway, the taxonomy of the creationists here, and this will be coming up as an element in the new book, Rocks for Their Volume 2, on the breakdown throws bird form. Absolutely is coming from Sarfatiante on this point. They don't have any creation, and so they're just not paying into the details at all. One example, they list a couple. One of these that one of them, the Confuciad, which are sized birds. These actually are the early and probably they are lumped in with the, which is kind of like the precursor group that's then eventually splitting off into these. That Michael Lee et al. 2014 and Wang et al. In 2015, delineating a lot of the details here. There's the Lee paper is particularly useful. Michael Lee has written a great deal of paleontology and genetic material over the years, and Darren Naish is hello Purple. Darren Naish and Gareth Dyke are also co-authors on this, along with Andrea Cow. Morphological clocks in paleontology, mid-Cretaceous origin. Now, again, absolutely nothing is of material detail. Look at this chart here that's listing off taxa involved, and it's not even comprehensive, but it's moving down as you go farther down into the row, you're finally bumping into the ornithines, and so the big block in the middle relates to the enantiornithines, and they're breaking these things down in terms of the systematics, which would then be fascinating. And there's another more detailed breakdown of the matter for contrast as well from that paper through that, and cross connect is how they're working out their nodes. The creationists simply just bluff their way through it and ignore all the data fields. I would really love to see how any barometrologist would be through all of those and trying to isolate what is the weights between one group and the next in such a way that they could the enantiornithines and the ornithines from lumped together as the same kind. No creation is certainly that the birds are a single kind, so they're going at the family level. So couldn't there have been the same range with the enantiornithines and all these others? But how are they breaking it down? Neither Tay nor Sarfati are particularly notorious for doing barometrology. That ANOPA program and that are used by people like Todd Wood and all that. So maybe they just feel out of touch with it. Remember, the architects in Genesis and Sarfati and Tay are operating over at CM. It's interesting, and we've already noted how generally insular the book is in relying on in-house material from CMI. So because they have nothing and no tool to apply, perhaps it's understandable if they aren't doing anything on it. There's actually a poor making a choppy. Oh, it could be a poor connection. A little bit of things getting on there. If it's having difficulty hearing me, I'm broadcasting okay, but if there's choppiness at that end, it's bloody restream. So sorry, kids, nothing I can really do about it. And I've got a little bit of a croup at the moment, so maybe making me sound than others. But the counter is still being smoothly, so I'm assuming that it's recording okay. The meat of the thing, of course, the major text in the material that I've got will all be in the description once I'm not too worried about that end of it. And of course, there'll be that stuff on the dinosaur digit issue. I want to break down all of the supposed traits that supposedly distinguish birds from dinosaurs, and I think Dapper Dino field day on that. I think my video is once in a while is kind of flipping up in that. Quite right. Nothing I can do about it, kids. The part 2 of our little show came along quite by accident. I follow up on Flint, who is a archaeologist who has been particularly lambasting Graham Hancock and company, but he lit into something. I'll be putting a link to the video where he does that. Was really excoriating Elon Musk because he was in the news a few weeks back about that Rome fell because they weren't having enough babies, and the historical fact was that this just isn't true, and that clearly Dibble documented how every aspect of this stuff was just falling apart, and that he popped up. Musk has been repeating this a lot. He did it in 2024 Trump rally, and Tucker Carlson was also against immigration and has tried to use Roman Empire as his sock puppet too. So it's interesting. Like Graham Hancock, Flint notes that Musk has a doomsday cult vision of the world to boot. So bad method all the way around. What was really intriguing was that Dibble, in usual approach, hello, Barbara. Approach into where he's getting his information from. And it turned out to be from the 1944 The Story of Civilization, Part 3, Caesar and Christ. That brought a smile to my face because I already familiar with that word. The reason why is because it popped up in the Apollo, who is a by plaintiff circulating bit of Tucker Carlson and Philip Johnson, and over into YEC land in some other context. It's a rather intriguing little blip. Lapin was using it as regarding the role of Christianity in Roman history. And I went into all of this problem that Lapin was representing. They're running, yes, Trump's endorsement. Yeah, that could be the kiss of death for him there, Purple. The My Pillow guy probably has not a snowball, but it's we live in a very strange world now, so who can say? I'll be putting a link up to the piece that I had done in 2004 in choice, going into all of this stuff, Lapin's part of things. Spills over into politics. Lapin and YEC or D. James Kennedy from down in Ministries. Breakfast with Jordan, take us back a ways before Obama, and into the ID side of David Klinghoffer, who was of Lapin operation and ended up covering Institute and Sir Johnson's worldview. So I'll be letting you know that you can just refer the post that I did on Lapin, which will fit you in on the little background stuff. That the interesting thing about it was that when you get what Lapin was claiming about reciting Durant, it wasn't that wrong so much as Lapin's representing the contents and skipping around the part he didn't want to deal with. Lapin, the Durant book, 1944, it's older history. It was a general history. It's nothing that was a mega historical tone. Not analysis, but fine as a general summary of stuff. And we've been material. And a book, not a recent book, Purple up in the source field for gives some clues as to who's citing. So it wouldn't Musk way has relied on some level of apologetics on the website, alluding to this sort of argument based on Will Durant. May not have actually read much of Durant, may not have actually gone to the source originally. It's perfectly feasible he could have been riffing off of it secondarily via some unspecified secondary source. Given how Lapin could misrepresent Durant, it seems perfectly reasonable that Musk could be doing exactly the same thing. This bears in mind, who would have thought they would have trouble in a state known for harsh winters. This is someone trying to sell a Cybertruck. I was so good in rush you could think out. The Cybertrucks are not terribly good trucks. There's a bunch of YouTube and TikTok stuff, showing them mired in amounts of blood and or snow, and they just have no track. I described the Cybertruck as the insolent, as an is just arguably not only is it a wacky, but ugly looking vehicle, but as a truck, it's pretty. Minnesota die. Minnesota has a lot of variety. Depends on if it's the urban areas, the rural areas. Similar mix seems to be going on in a couple of these other states that have gone through sea change years. There's been an awful active proselytizing by extremist groups in these areas. Dynamics going on in Eastern Washington, Eastern are all the same boat. But about to be hitting some really big league screw ups It's extremely that on this Venezuela matter that Trump is not even in state dual leader of Venezuela, like a personal thief, like Augustus was Egypt, and suck all that little oil out of things. Given mental ability up, mess. I actually burn people and stuff into Venezuela, taken over the government. All the mechanisms of police state are still, but cycle gang, hit squads, and all of that. Land a bunch of technicians at the oil refinery and try to take it over. And what are they going to have the Marines as guard, or what? Are they going to be able to withstand snipers and sabotage? It's screwball. Or maybe he's not going to do anything at all. That it's all bluff and bluster, and Trump will go off and they can distract him with some, oh, look at some marble for your renovation of the White House, and you're building your great triumphal arch and all that. You know, it's very possible that Trump's attention span is cycling around. It's really Hegseth, Steve Miller, and a lot of these other people that are the powers behind the throne, as it were, basically running amok without any oversight whatsoever. And Trump wafts in to preen and be praised, and then wafts back to golfing or picking out marble samples for the White House. Veno thing shows they have plenty of people in the U.S. military willing to follow through with clearly illegal orders. Yeah, this is going to be a mess. It's going to be a mess internationally. It's going to be a mess regionally. Quite a few analysts have been pointing out this is a disaster for American credibility when it comes to other countries doing exactly the same thing. And will it come a point when they can do it to them? That's what the heck is going to go on. But it's pathetic and disgusting. But what are you going to expect from Trump 2.0? I mean, this is the kind of no guardrail mess that Kamala Harris and others were warning about, and I was suspecting was going to happen, that his little brain can veer all over the place. And then it's the ideologues that are enabling him, of course. These people have their vision, and the bluster and bluffing, the resource greediness, all of these efforts with Greenland, Nigeria, and Venezuela are all based on acquiring resource things. Ironically, the Chinese are much better at this kind of thing. They've been signing resource agreements and that with countries and building big port systems and all that all over the place for years. And of course, I think in the long run, it's going to be making them very unpopular as imperialists. We're kind of playing also ran with nincompoop Trump trying to deal with this stuff. So who knows where it's going to go next. As long as Mega Mike's in charge in the House, fine. So long as the Republican Party now are in there, they're not going to do anything unless things get so firestorm angry at the grassroots that at least some of the people realize that they don't have a snowball's chance in hell of getting reelected unless they start breaking up on things. But that's what the next 6 months and 8 months and so forth are going. It's a long way, kids, till we get to the election. So, U.S. have any credibility left? Yeah, there's not a great deal of it, at least in terms of the Trump administration. There, I'm sure, are people around the world that still have fond affection for our institutions as they were before Trump and our goals in our Statue of Liberty. But so long as Trump is in power and calling the shots geopolitically, nobody can trust us. And as I think I mentioned in last week's show and previously, that I have the sneak that American defense contractors are going to be screwed permanently by Trump, because so many of these countries are going to go, we can't depend on the United States anymore. And therefore, it would be disastrously stupid to depend on their weapon systems that would be compromised if you get a new Trump. popping down the line. So General Dynamics and Lockheed and Raytheon and all these other companies that are knocking around doing potential sales, the competitors in Europe and the like, and Canada are really pushing envelopes to where incentive is for them. This that I suspect is going to be happening eventually. About 350 million people in a population of 8 billion. The idea is that as the rest of the world develops industrial capacities and ambitions and big egos to boot, our proportion of things diminishes, even if we stay really efficient. But Trump is going to be pushing us through a phase where we're stumbling over ourselves. It won't end everything, just as environmental policies and wind turbines and other things. A lot of that electrification and that will still be going on. I can't imagine that the General Motors car and Ford and the others are going to completely give up on electric vehicles, not if they plan on selling anywhere other than the United States, Chinese competition being what it is. So regardless of what they say to Trump to ass-kiss, there's a bigger dimension going on. And of course, you've got lots of states, California, Washington, and others that are still pressing ahead on these things because we're not stupid. And so there's an extent to which the Trump policies are going to be acting as roadblocks and stumbling blocks, but they won't actually be stopping a lot of things going on. And then we'll pick up the ball eventually again. But the question is, will we have lost enough yardage, to use a football analogy, that we're never going to be able to play catch up? That we'll see in the next few years. Canada already decided to buy French fighters instead of the American ones. That's exactly my point, yes. And the Sweden, there are players in the field. There are various weapon systems that Germans and others are developing that are state-of-the-art. And of course, the Ukrainians, who are just going gangbusters in developing low-cost, extremely effective drone systems, which I suspect under the radar, Taiwan is paying close attention to too. It may be well the case China is a wing's dangerous if they don't proceed in a window to try to take Taiwan. It's going to reach maybe the stage when Taiwan can defend itself against an invasion, because no tanks are going to be driving across the South China Sea. They're going to have to do it entirely by naval assault and paratroops. And if your equipment is being interdicted by a sea of that are way less expensive than the forces that they're dealing with. And there's reason to believe that the Chinese Navy and military are not quite as cracked up, as super brilliant as they like to imply, in the same way that the Russian military has turned out to be not quite the formidable juggernaut that people in my generation were fearing. It may have actually been a little more true 30, 40 years ago, but things have frayed to the point where, as we saw, the Russian army was unable to take Ukraine. And that is a measure of how murky things are. Only pilots from Quebec will understand the instrument panel. Well, I don't know that a lot of these fly-by-wire systems and things that are being developed probably have instantaneous ability to translate from one. You can switch to English and French just with the touch of a button. I think they're well aware of the dynamics of these things. So it's going to be an interesting little world to deal with. Remember, the European Union is 450 million people. It's a free market, free trade zone, that if it can hold its act together reasonably well and weather the coming mess that Trump is generating on our side of the Atlantic, comparatively speaking, they can be made stronger. And long term, the moment Ukraine is made part of the European Union and NATO, yipes, most of the really clever Russian inventors and technical people are not Russia. And so if Russia with Ukraine was an empire. Well, is the European Union an empire with Ukraine? We'll see. 500 million people? Okay. Yes, those are not French, but Swedish. Yes, the Saab, a lot of the general European fighters that had been developed over the years now, and they're all investigating stealth technology. Technology is not something you can keep in a box. The blustering irony of the Trump administration is that this is not a guy who has any savvy when it comes to making things. Even a lot of the people who he is relying on as enablers don't even necessarily know how to make things. We'll find out just how far down the road NVIDIA and their AI revolution goes before it suddenly dawns on people that A, it doesn't work as well as it needs to, and is not actually generating any overall profit. They're able to, so long as they can maintain quarterly growth, they can look like they're doing something. But there's an awful lot of shell games going on, I think. Plus, they're colossal energy hogs. And that's another factor that a depression economy is going to be testing, as well as all of those Bitcoin crypto mine bits that are enormous energy hogs. And there's going to be an awful lot of states where some pretty radical people on the right as well as the left may be particularly anxious to pull the plug on a lot of these high energy things that only are serving the activities of the wealthy who want to get rid of jobs and replace them with machines. So interesting times that we are living in, kids. We'll see how all of that works out. And the whole armaments industry and technology industry, remember, Russia only has 150 million people in it, and it's overextended. How long can they keep cannon foddering their own people without Putin going the way of the czars? And it'll be good riddance. So anyway, we'll be seeing what happens with Maduro and all of the show trials that Trump wants to put on. It would be supremely ironic if the incompetent Trump just didn't entirely get convictions. This wouldn't surprise me. I mean, the last time we had this stuff back in the Reagan years with, what's his name, Noriega down in Panama, they didn't get all convictions on those. And that was with what seemed to be a pretty ironclad case. And the Reagan people were substantially more competent than the nutballs in the Trump Justice Department. So it would be entirely ironic. They might not even get any convictions in this area. There's a lot of punitive vindictiveness to try these things. And I'm no fan of Maduro. I was no fan of Hugo Chavez. But the oil-centric braggadocio of the Trump invasion serves neither the United States interest nor that of Venezuelans, as far as I can see. Saab Gripen are already designed by the Canadian Cold, and unlike the F-35, yes, thank you, Vesta. Here we do. Yeah, I had some awareness of some of the new technology. Americans build some of the most, and not necessarily worth it, technological fighter planes, that bloody overrun F-35 and all of that. That we deal with, that I don't see changing in the graft, corrupt, pay-for-play monstrosity that is the Trump administration. Going to be an awful lot of convictions, an awful lot of lawyers losing their licenses. There's going to be an awful lot of international indictments. There's going to be an awful lot of people who maybe won't be able to travel abroad because they would be facing consequences of the case. So it's going to be a messy, murky time for just about everybody that deserves those sorts of things. Let me put up our thank you note here for our patrons of the channel. I again fully recognize how dicey time, and so I'm very, very grateful for everybody that's stuck with us through all of this time, and we will continue plowing on episode by episode, finishing up the technology chapter to the other area, just add or just 26 we're there, which we should be in the spring zone. Lucky is going to be another zingaroni. And then the plan would be that we'd be also doing a book on the whole conspiracy thinking mindset. That'll be the one after Rux 2. And then way down the road, I'm still going to be pushing for our big maybe history of the structure and evolution and social consequences of religion in our species. That's I've got a massive material on that front, and the literature on how cognitive stuff works and how the brain works with a lot of this stuff. There's enough material that I think warrants a fresh look at things for everybody to deal with. Plus, how religionists have mangled a lot of the data over the years, and especially when you pull back and look at that big widescreen. What the hell are humans in the religion department for 300,000 years? And before that, our genus going back millions of years. What are the roots of all of that? And how come religions that we practice now are so, I blink, recent? This is not as though the God of Abraham or Hinduism or any of these other religions have been clocking along right from the get-go. Now, is it? So, oh, I'm F-35 now experiencing buyer's remorse as the cost keeps going up. Oh my, yes, God, the F-35 sort of ranks with the Osprey helicopter as a thing that on paper looks really good, but boy, in practice, it's got downsides. At least when it works good, the Osprey is spectacular, but when it fails, it kills its crews. But the F-35 is just sheer not quite matching up to the dynamics of things. And of course, Trump wants the imaginary battleships. That's another one that's probably a not further away expenses. We'll see whether or not even like Congress, let alone whatever out of the 26 terms, really does much in our adversary. Happy to see in a state of disarray. Russian, Chinese disinformation will high gear to kind of at each other's throats. We will do that as possible. So it's only 2-star rating. Amazon, yes, put them in bulk out through Amazon. Got that. Let's our little ad for Musk where they're waiting for that. There we go. And as my dulcet cross unimpeded. Yes, it wouldn't be in the U.S. far more stable in the U.S. Of a bunch shortage that's going about looking at see how dicey some of the most recent U.S. bond people worried about stuff. All the European Union needs to do is storm better than we do to gain a comparative advantage. And other things that we'll be dealing with, and we can't all tell this until things start falling apart, of what's going on in China and whether or not there are cracks in the Chinese juggernaut that are being wallpapered over because they're a police state that controls information. But that doesn't mean that they don't have things ready to fall apart, as the disintegration of the Eastern Bloc back in the 1980s and 90s and the Soviet Union and that indicate. So not all tyrannies last forever. And there's a problem when you're trying to build a system based on ideology and information distortion. You can keep it going for a while, but I think in long-term growth, you need to have free flow of information. You need to have democracy. You need to have people treated with human dignity and all of that. And we need to show that there are consequences to being stupid, and there are consequences and advantages to not being stupid. Busy time for the next 10 years. But I caution, who in 1928 could anticipate the world of 1932 or 1936 or 1940? Just want to make sure that it doesn't turn into a carnage and catastrophe like the 30s and 40s did, and come out of our little weird mess stronger and better. We'll see. Other countries dump U.S. bonds. The U.S. would be a majority. Oh, yeah. And remember, Mr. Trump has the keys to the economy. Now, the president is not an emperor and so does not control everything, but they do have enough policy going on and impact on things, and also strangling with their various billionaires acquiring various media. I'll be intrigued to see what CBS News with the new TORP that's on there, how that's going to play starting Monday. He says he's going to be perfectly fine and wonderful and paying attention to what the Vox Populi. It was a very weird statement that came out. Barry Weiss, of course, is becoming the new minder. There were meddling with 60 Minutes and all of that. So whether or not we've quite reached the RIP CBS stage, we'll see. Free flow of information, and to make sure that nobody can shut people up, and standing up for what is true. And when things start falling apart in bad ways due to bad policies from the Trump administration, everybody's got to still say, excuse me, but this is a screw up. And Trump, of course, will never, ever accept blame for anything. And his acolytes, Levitt, his press agent, and the various little toadies knocking around in the cabinet will never disagree with him. Otherwise, they'll be out on their ear. But you eventually reach the stage when whatever is spewing from their mouths, nobody believes, even their former believers, because the reality has disconnected enough. You were seeing a little ripple of this with Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is not exactly the most well-grounded cannon on the parapets as it is, but even she was being pushed off the cliff. So this is going to be a very intriguing time, and nobody said living in the United States or the world was going to be trouble-free. We have gone through crises before, and we must end up persevering and triumphing and making things better because it's important. And the idiot Trumps of the world must never be allowed to succeed long-term. They can become an object lesson for us so that we can point to them and say, don't ever do that again, and make sure that statutes and the like make it exceedingly difficult for people to do that again. Trump has been testing every boundary of our system and this unitary presidential thing, and there's a degree of which the idiots on the Supreme Court have been supporting that point of view, these faux originalists who are no such thing. Troubled times, but remember, don't blame me, I voted for Harris. So sadly, CTV has become the Canadian Fox News. Oh, yes, that's sad. Very sad indeed. Anyway, we put up our little adverts, and everybody stay super safe. Watch out for the wooden penguins, And next week will be another installment of the Casey Luskin Show, the most boring source analysis thing, because it never comes up with anything that's helping their case. It's going to be a long show, but I'll be keeping at it on that just to document it, because somebody needs to. So anyway, see you all next week, kids, and everybody stay safe and watch out for attacking countries and people and all the rest. That who knows what's going to happen with our screwball president. Bye.